Hey there, it's Mila Political and my best friend's Kat, and this is another episode of my thoughts on this. So, on the 21st of December, the Canadian Labour Institute posted up this little infographic, and it's talking about three truths about COVID-19 payouts. That there are three truths to the COVID-19 payouts that Canada has provided both individuals and corporations. Uh, the Canadian Labour Institute proposes that is the rich and powerful got way more than the rest of us, that we'll be the only ones who will ever have to account for every penny we got, so we being the working class, and that three will be the only ones ever accused of cheating. This CBC article points out that this is one confusion, that the intake questionnaire asked about employment income, self-employment income, right? And so this article focuses mostly on entrepreneurs, but it addresses an issue with um, just the intake form for CURB, that it specifically just says income. When people dig further in, it does come up to describe net income, but for most people, when you're seeing this page, you're assuming that this questionnaire of like, have you met these criteria is going to be specific, right? And so a lot of people thought it was income, gross income, right? Now, if you don't understand what gross and net income is, Investopedia is an interesting source. I wouldn't say that they're unbiased. They definitely have a lean towards the system as it stands, but it is a good way to sort of understand what capitalists are talking about when they talk about things like net income or gross income. So the gross income is either, depends on if you're a business or if you're an individual. For an individual, it's just everything you get paid before taxes and so on. And for a business, it's everything you earn minus the cost of your product, which is more complicated than it needs to be, but that's a good, just general idea. Just to generally understand it, that's what it is. Net income is like when you take away, taxes, or for businesses, it can include administrative costs and other costs that aren't directly related to the product, but are costs of the business. Some people would have thought that maybe it was net income. They would have been right. Some people would have thought maybe it's gross income. They turned out to be wrong. But the critical point here is that it was an ambiguous questionnaire. The government did not make sure that the public had enough information to understand what they were agreeing to. The issue is that a lot of people have been confused about how much CURB they are eligible for, if they're eligible at all. But then when we look over at businesses where citizens have been getting CURB, businesses have been getting the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. This is where things become very clearly biased towards one side or the other. Here is another CBC article talking about the lack of transparency from the Canadian government, the Trudeau government. One really good quote here is from Catherine Kaplinska's. She says, "Our government's top priority is supporting Canadians and businesses as we weather the COVID-19 pandemic. This week's fall economic statement provides detailed and transparent accounting for government expenditures, as well as a growth plan to ensure robust and resilient recovery once the virus is defeated." But going back to this document, the Canadian Labour Institute makes a claim that the government is refusing to publicly name most of the the vast majority of the companies who are receiving aid, and the few who we've discovered, who have been discovered, appear to be giving a lot of money in what's called dividends to shareholders. So what's essentially being presented here is that um, there's statements by the governments being made that they're giving this wage subsidy as a way to ensure businesses can continue to afford to pay employees. But what's happening is that dividends are going to shareholders. Now, dividends are a very specific thing, all right? Investopedia again, really good source for this kind of information. So they say a dividend is the distribution of some of a company's earnings to a class of its shareholders. More to it, feel free to look into that. Um, so here, Financial Post, again, not my favorite source in the world, but in this case, this is a good article. It's showing that Canadian companies that received the workers' subsidy kept paying a dividend, right? So what we're looking at here is that these companies who are claiming a need to have a subsidy for paying their employees' wages are somewhere getting enough profit to pay large dividends to their shareholders. So this could mean a couple different things is happening. Perhaps these companies are profiting during the pandemic, and so the money they're getting from the worker subsidy is going to subsidizing wages. But in turn, they're then able to ensure that their shareholders get a large chunk of the profits, right? So what should be happening is that companies that need the support would then get this wage subsidy to pay their employees because they don't have the money to pay their employees. But these dividends show that they're actually making enough profit to pay their employees. The other alternative possibility is that they're taking these earnings or these subsidies, sorry, and they're registering them as earnings um, and then paying them out to their shareholders instead of to their employees. So I'm not saying that is what's happening. I'm not even saying that, I'm not even alleging that that is happening. That is a possibility. That is one of the things that could be happening. The other one is that they would be, making lots of profits and actually maybe shouldn't be getting this wage subsidy because they can take from their own profits to pay their employees. Um, and so any way you look at it, there's something up with these large corporations getting this wage subsidy and when they either don't need it or can't be trusted with it, right? So that's sort of what we're looking at. And so simultaneously, we have that issue, and the government is penalizing working class people who have been struggling through the pandemic through either job loss or loss of wages. Um, you know, Here in my city, our homeless population doubled over the pandemic because of job losses and increases in rent. So there's a lot of things happening that is framing the average person as the enemy and the capitalist and the CEO as the victim or as the individual in need. So this really gets down to my thoughts on this, right? So I feel like this really betrays the neoliberal attitudes of our government. So they are looking more towards ensuring companies survive rather than empowering the population with direct money. I think it really puts on display a lot of the core failures of the capitalist system. As much as I will keep fighting for very strong fiscal supports for the working class. I don't think they're the end all be all. I think that you will always have caveats like these with anything like a UBI or a curb. I think it's better than what we have now, but I think ultimately what we really need to look at is changing the way we structure our distribution of materials and goods and find an economic system, whether that's indigenous governance, communism, whatever that system might be. I think it's important that it's something that shifts the narrative from power being held by, a few elite capitalists and shifts that power over to the working class. I think we need a more democratic system than what we have right now because it's clearly still corrupt. I don't think it will ever not be corrupt. So, yeah, thank you to my patrons, Justine and the Blue Druid. If you would be interested in supporting me as well, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can like and subscribe and hit the bell on this video. That helps me get seen by more people. If you have the financial capacity to, you can head on over to Patreon and give me a subscription. I really enjoy making these videos. It's a great way for me to practice researching and presenting, and I really like that I'm able to tackle subjects that really matter to me. They're currently not that popular of a subject, so I'm not really meeting YouTube's metrics for this thing. I'm going to be working on improving that, but overall, I would prefer to stick to things that personally matter to me over things that are like popular. That being said, I will be working on some videos over the holiday break that hopefully I'll release in January that will be a bit more editing heavy. So right now I have my series Politics as a Joke. I've got this, my thoughts on this. This is more like a sort of chat with you and vlog a bit. And then I'm going to start another series. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but I'm going to probably start with some very basic things like discussing autonomy and what that means, and discussing democracy and what that means. So sort of like really like very specific subjects. Overall, I probably will start trying to tackle popular subjects here and there, and in addition to what I really like, which is what I'm doing right now. So, thank you very much, and have a good one.